What's up, guys? Legendary Talks here, episode 108. We have the amazing Kenny Mack tonight. How y'all feeling today? I'm doing good. I'm feeling very bright and neon tonight. This actually says Detroit right here, and then it has my name on the back, but we can't see that. So yeah, we have a really cool, interesting guy, Kenny Mack. And he just joined. How's everyone doing? What's everyone drinking tonight? What should our drinking word be? What do we think our drinking word should be? And we'll have Kenny choose the options. Let me get him in here. Detroit. Yeah, that's a good one. That's always a good one, actually, right? That probably won't come up a lot. We're about to go live with legendary Kenny Mack. What's up, Chibo? What's up, Kenny?
What up? What up? I'm good with Detroit. You already know that, D. Let's do that. That's the word.
Reality is that, first of all, what are you drinking?
I'm a lightweight these days. So I got a little ginger beer.
Okay. Cheers. Oh, cheers.
Cheers. Salute. Definitely.
Thanks.
Turn you up a little bit. Perfect.
So, thank you for doing this. I'm not sure if you've seen one of these. Have you seen my talks yet?
Yeah, I've watched a couple of them.
Okay, good. So I like to tell everybody that people that have been very important to culture, in any capacity. So it's like it could be DJ, photographer, like yourself. Many important people that give each other New York. Really about back and forth about these I would say we tell each other. Okay.
Yeah, hold on one second. I'm just trying to get my sound right. Hold on.
I hear the echo. It's me, right? IG, they was messing with us. I was gonna wear a fur tonight, but I decided not to at the last minute. Hey, Elizabeth Barron, how you feeling? Thank you for that. I just saw your text. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. I said when I created this show, I said we all have these great stories about, I don't know, Biggie, Michael, and if we don't share the point of that, they're to be shared. We can tell them to each other a million times, so they're important to share them. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
Okay, good.
I'm down to share that, yeah.
No, I'm saying, how's your sound?
Oh, my sound is okay. I'm trying to, I think it's good now. It should be fine. If it isn't, I'll just connect it to another speaker in the house or something. But yeah, it's good right now.
So describe yourself to me if I did not know you.
DC bred, New York raised, and LA living. I'm a cat that came up in the culture. Everything that I do is connected to culture, and that's in a multitude of different ways. D, you've known me for a long time, so I'm somebody who came up in DC and then in New York, throwing parties, flipped that into doing marketing and branding work for a multitude of different companies and individuals, and then turned that into focusing on creative direction and strategy. And then, in this new chapter of life, I am focused on content creation in all different mediums, from, short form, TV, and film. So that's where I'm at right now.
That was a great description. People usually say, "Oh, I'm just a downtown guy." That's a really good resume. Good job. I like to ask that question first because people breaks their inhibitions after that question.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, but it's interesting that you say that because I had to talk to a client of mine recently. They said pitch, and so I said, the reality is the words culture and influencer are thrown so much. I roll my eyes and cringe when I hear them. But I said the reality is really of the culture and influence. So it's the truth. I hate those words. It's the most overused words in our vocabulary. But that's the reality. 100% of the culture, 100% influence. So sorry.
It's funny you say that. I've been having to educate clients on the term influencer and really try to reclaim the term influencer, because the term is used on people that don't really have influence anymore. I think I remember a couple years back, you know, a New York night, you, me, Lisa Cooper, a couple of us having dinner and
See,
have, yeah,
I remember well. You mean so, Damon DeGraff, Frank
yeah,
Roberts?
yeah. And it was amazing. It was just really like, I mean, true to New York night. Just random. We ran into each other one by one. Next thing you know, we're at the Edition. We're having dinner, and that conversation came up. And I've been having continuously having that conversation with not only in the casual space, but in my career. And really, what I've been trying to explain to people is that, you know, the term influencer doesn't apply to people with influence anymore, and it's been used as a blanket term to talk about, you know, people with high social media following, right? And what I'm about to say isn't a knock on them, but it's more about a really reclaiming and understanding what the word means, right? To have influence on somebody means that you influence the way that person thinks, acts, buys, whatever, right? Like you
Preach, preach, preach.
exactly. You know, you
Talking to me, I literally preach fire. You could not be saying someone that doesn't. I know it is exactly what you're saying. I agree with it, and I co-sign. You know, so
100%. I think this is more for those who are out there who have this same frustration and they don't know yet how to put it into the context of, you know, when they're explaining it to somebody. Because what I tell people is that person that has a huge social media following, what I call them is an amplifier, right? So you work with an influencer like yourself because you don't care about what other people think. You don't care about, like, you get a organic urge to do something. I'm going to wear this neon green Detroit jacket with my name on it because I feel it, right? You know, so salute. And then that in turn is going to flip somebody else to be like, oh, you know what? I really like that neon that Damon was wearing the other night because he wore it. I feel like I can do that now. And then it becomes a thing. The amplifier is, you know, people with high social media followings for the most part, because you do get the sweet spot of both, but they, for the most part, have a huge following and they can get the word out, but they only want to wear something or be associated with something or touch something once it's already been proven that it is hot and it is cool. Influencers are at the forefront of that and saying, I don't care what anybody else thinks. I'm going to do this. And if it catches on, it catches on. But for real, I don't care. Right. So, and I've been telling my clients, you know, like, you use the amplifier once you know what you want your message to be and just get them to get it out to 1 million people. But when you're trying to figure out what your message is, that's when you sit down with an influencer and really kind of figure it out.
well, first of all, that was articulated. I think that many people and have felt and that same way. And that, you know, I don't think I've ever heard it articulated. Kudos to you being able to articulate the frustrations of people. But I have said this many times. Influencers, like, you know, 2, 3 million, I don't know, 100,000. I mean, $500,000. I don't give a crap what they have to say. Like, I personally heard that they like this certain thing. I'm, you know, it's not for me at all. So I'm not the target demographic. Like, exactly, I care about things I care about. You know, and that's, you know. But anyway, that's not, we're getting off topic. So I want to talk about and your influence, lack of a better term. So you're from DC.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think it shaped you creatively and as this adult creative?
Say that one more time. I broke up a little bit. Sorry.
I said you're from DC, and how has it shaped you kind of creatively and influenced adult man in a.
You know, it's interesting, you know, being from DC and the time that I lived in DC, it was Chocolate City, you know, and being Black wasn't something that you had to think about. You just were, you know, and I think that that had, for us who are from the city, and I've had this conversation with multiple cats from DC recently, like, you know, we saw Black owned businesses, we saw, you know, Black, like, streetwear as it is today. When I was growing up in high school and college, and you had brands like Madness and Squares and all of these young cats in DC who were just like, I'm going to buy this storefront, I'm going to go to the embroiderer, you know, out in Maryland, and I'm going to get this shirt done or the silk screener. And they were selling their own product. Like we saw that, you know, at a very early age. You know, I always tell people one of the first performances of that Puff and Biggie had on BET, they were both wearing Madness t-shirts. Puff had the #1 and Big had the #2 on it, and that was that was a local DC black owned clothing company that was a block up the street from Howard. And I was like, oh, Puff obviously, you know what I'm saying, like went to that. He and I have had conversations about like the impact of what those brands were doing at that time, because you would go to other cities and you wouldn't really be able to see that. So I think that was one thing that was like hugely important for me, is just being able to see top to bottom black owned businesses at such a young age, that like being an entrepreneur wasn't that scary of a thing for me, because I saw people that looked like me doing that, and
Yeah,
that's carried on.
it wasn't an anomaly the way it is in other places, even now, you know.
Exactly.
So
Yeah. Even to today. Yeah.
standard and the norm, which is we're up that way. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
and then what's the first song that you kind of blew your mind or you really connected? First song or video?
First video, I mean, obviously for me, and I'm gonna age myself with this, but you're gonna get it, is Thriller. I mean, when I remember being a kid in the bed, like watching that like forever long video and just being like, this is a short film, like, and seeing cinematography connected to music like that was just insane. So I think that that was the first video that really caught me.
Uh, Everybody says Thriller. Not, I usually include Michael Jackson's question because everybody says Thriller.
Yeah.
I'm myself included. You know, I just was like amazed how large he was doing. That's what it was. How large for me, how the grandness of it all.
Yep.
First song, non-Michael Jackson, that kind of blew your mind.
Oh, that's hard, because the first song that I can remember that blew my mind was a Michael Jackson song. But I think you know, something that was interesting, and it just stuck with me because of the lyrics, was "If I Was Your Girlfriend," Prince.
Yeah.
Just because, you know, so far back then, to be having the type of context that he was having in that song was just really interesting, and it was just, you know, amazing. I think you know, and then for me, I think also from a hip hop standpoint was Mahogany, Eric B and Rakim. Like when that bass line came in, like that was the rawest song that I had heard in my in my life, and I was like, yo, this thing just has me like locked in.
We were saying, I think 2 days ago or Monday was the 24th anniversary of Hardcore, and we were that, and I said, when that came out, I had ever in my life heard a woman rap like that. To me, I was like, it was blown away. I mean,
Yeah.
we're getting off topic.
Yeah.
So, if a movie kind of like childhood or, you know, growing up movie either could describe you, or what's your favorite growing up?
My favorite film growing up was Coming to America.
Yeah.
Again, I think it was the audacity of Black royalty that did it for me. And it's like, I mean, it's the funniest film like ever made. You can never not watch it and not laugh.
It literally, I have to watch it. We all know every time. Well, again, what I it's different is that the level that they did everything, like the costuming, the huge dance level they did everything. Obviously, was like various scenes and Eddie Murphy playing all those different characters. That in itself is, but the grand scale of the way that they did everything, I love that. Like, you know, I go to Coming to America.
It's funny too, because I tell people all the time, and you'll know this, there was this moment in the 90s, the late 90s and early 2000s, where the concept of a Black film started coming into perspective, and you would think about it like, oh, it's, you know, the studio started doing it. It was like lower budget, and it was all this thing because they were trying to, you could imagine all these non-Black people, you know, making the rules about what content for Black people should look like. And I loved Eddie Murphy's movies in the 80s and early 90s, because they were done to this level, and it wasn't looked at like a Black movie. It was just looked at as like a dope comedic film. Coming to America, Beverly Hills Cop, like all of those things, you know?
You know, it's funny. I just had this conversation with DJ Kiss literally yesterday. We were saying that, you know, during that time, they were making Black movies like, at a really just kind of great, you know, dialogue, great developed characters. Then it kind of switched like all these like gangster movies and all these like why did it switch? I mean, like it was going in some direction during that time. You're right. All these movies
Mhm.
done at this excellent level, and then it kind of switched direction in a really weird way. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and then also kind of before you moved to New York in DC, was anyone kind of mentoring you, or was anyone that you were?
You know, I got to give a shout out to this cat, Mark Barnes in DC, who, if you were a young hustler, he might not have been on purpose mentoring you, but he was definitely doing that. And what was interesting with Mark was that he was this cat that was throwing these, I mean, huge, large scale events. Like people like at that time in the 90s, you
Yeah,
had like Shaq and Michael, Michael Jordan flying
yep,
in to go to his parties. Before he passed away, Andre Harrell's like on record talking about one of the illest events he's ever gone to was him coming to DC and going to this party that Mark threw and like losing his mind.
yeah.
And Puff gives, credit, being in Howard, his parties that he were throwing, like some of them were affiliated with Mark. But I had, they used to call me when I went to Howard University, they used to call me Kenny the intern because every semester I had a different internship. And I interned for Mark one year. And I'll never forget, like I got to the, like I knew him from throwing parties. He knew, like he was related to a really close friend of mine. He knew like my swag. Like I was this kid in DC who was, when at that time, DC was very buttoned up and formal. And I was the cat that would wear like sweatshirts and stuff like that, but still be fly. So I was young and he would still let me into the club just because of that anomaly. But then when I stepped to him like, yo, I want to work for you. He was like, cool, get to the club at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. And I was like, 8 o'clock in the morning, bro? Like the club don't start. So like, like 10 o'clock tonight. He's like, get to the club then. And I remember getting to the club that morning and he opened the doors and he showed me everything. And he was like, clean the club. And I was like, what? And he was like, clean the club, top to bottom. Here's all the cleaning equipment. Here's da, da, da. I was like, what? And so I wasn't going to say no. I cleaned the club. And then he said, see you tomorrow morning. And I was like, what? Came the next day, did the same thing. And I didn't understand why he was doing it. And then after he'd done it like 2 or 3 times, he's like, all right, come tonight for opening. You're managing the club tonight. And I was like, you didn't teach me nothing about managing the club. He was like, I don't have to teach you that. You'll see what I taught you. And when I got there that night, I was just walking around making sure everybody was good. And I was just picking stuff up as it was, like on the table or whatever. And he was like, yeah, I instilled in you having respect for the place that you work. And it's not all about the glitz and glamour. It's about making sure that the thing is like standing so that the glitz and glamour, the smoke and mirrors can happen around you, but you have to have the foundation right. And so he was definitely somebody that mentored me
Wow.
when I was in DC.
I love him. I don't know him. You know, mentored people like since you become successful. Have you mentored people, or what's your?
Oh, I mean, 100%. That's like, I think I've gone from being Kenny the intern to Kenny the mentor, right? A couple years ago, I launched this platform called Behind the Hustle that was all about mentorship. And the reason why I launched it, it was right at the economic crash several years ago. And I was, watching TV, and there's all these politicians blaming each other for the economic crash and the job market failing. And I was like, take politics aside from this. Really, what I see is the reason why we're having this issue is because kids are taught, hey, you go to high school, you graduate, you go to college, you get a degree, and then you come out, you get a job, or you go to grad school, you get another degree, and you get a six-figure job, right? Like literally that was what was told to kids. And you had all these kids coming out being like, my piece of paper, where's my job? And those jobs weren't there. And nobody ever taught them how to hustle. Like we all had this thing instilled in us about like, don't expect somebody to give something to you. You got to do what you got to do to get it, right? And so at the same time was the onslaught of social media and all of these people becoming these kind of like followed people and, followed for their success. And a lot of them were friends of mine. And so I was like, yo, let me flip the script and bring these people in front of these kids so these kids can see what it really takes, right? And, I had people like, Jerry Lorenzo at the beginning of Fear of God when it was like just taking off and whatever. And he telling kids like, yo, you know how much money that I lost? Like my own money, like that I had to bet on myself to do. And so kids would hear that and be like, wow, like I didn't realize that. Or, Anthony Mandler talking about like, the road to becoming a director like him. And he was like, first you do, your own little indie project. And then, like the local artist manager in your neighborhood sees you, and then they get you. And then you get this budget and you get this budget. And then you're at a $300,000 budget. And then I'm going to come for your ass because you're eating off of my plate. So stop idolizing me. And I would never forget that. Like, he flipped it on these kids, and he was just like, yo, like, stop idolizing us. Like, you want to be my competition. Like, do what you got to do to get here. And then we're going to scrap when you get here. But like, it's all good.
It's funny because I have mentored people indirectly for many years. Like you were saying earlier about your friend, I instinctually take certain people and I just show them the way. But I remember my first assistant I ever had, I would tell her all the time, she'll tell you, I said, figure it out. And I would just leave. I'm like, you got to figure it out. But I feel like that's the only way people learn is by, forcing them to figure it out on their own. But I also, for many years I was frustrated with that generation. But about a year or I don't know, a couple of years, I had the epiphany. If you're 23 now and you've gotten paid, I don't know, dollars to post a program, well, you're not a hustler. In you, and it's not your fault though. Because of this generation where you can get paid $5,000 to post something, it takes you a minute to do. So I blame the current, whatever that, I don't know,
It's Gen Z now, yeah. The 20-year-olds, the younger side of the 20-year-olds are Gen Z. It's still millennial on the top side.
I don't blame the hustle because they didn't have to. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
Okay, so when did you move to New York and why?
I moved to New York in 2000. I moved because I started my own marketing company at Howard with my best friends, and we picked up Vibe magazine as a client. And, we did all these different, we were doing everything Vibe did in DC. We helped launch their magazine called Blaze back then at Howard. And through my junior year to my senior year, Vibe had offered me like 3 positions. And I was like, you don't understand. I got to get this piece of paper or my mother's going to kill me. So I have to graduate from Howard. And after I graduated, I kind of worked in DC for, 6 months. And my mother again was like, because Columbia Business School recruited me and I didn't want to go. And she was like, you got a semester to figure it out. And you're either going to go to Columbia or you're going to have like a real deal job. And they offered me another position at that point to be the marketing manager. So I moved up to New York to be the marketing manager of Vibe magazine. Yeah.
I never knew.
Yeah.
But I had Emil on here and on here. I've had everybody on here for some, but I think Vibe is one of the most culture like basically ever. Vibe is so important, and I think it's gotten cost aside now, but Vibe is one of the most important, probably one of the most important magazines that ever existed. So Vibe being so
100%. I mean, we used to call it Vibe University and Bad Boy Grad School. It was like the amount of people that went from Vibe to Puff, but like it definitely taught me a lot. And having the opportunity to be around people and be mentored by people like Bevy, Fred Jackson, Carla Radford, like it was. I mean, I can't ask for anything more. It was really an amazing time.
I never knew you worked for Vibe.
Yeah.
What was the in New York?
What was my first what?
Club.
Oh, Nels downstairs. Yep.
Because I would say the first time I first club I went to was in Detroit. I walked in and I swear like we're singing. It was such a like euphoric moment. How was that first night for you? What was the feeling?
You know what's so funny? It's funny how it comes full circle. So let me be clear. The first club I went to when I moved to New York was Nels. It was the first night. I literally drove the U-Haul with my mom and my stepdad, moved into to Washington Heights, to my apartment in Washington Heights. And then my roommate was like, we're going downtown to hang out at this club. And I was like, cool. And I mean, boxes, everything was on the floor, and we went downtown. And we walked in and we met these 2 women off the bat, and it was just a great vibe, and we were having fun and talking. And those 2 women are like still to this day lifelong friends, Ciara Pardo and Violet Camacho. So like C, which is hilarious because C, she went on to be Rihanna's creative director and partner, you know, with the launch of Fenty and everything. And the first Fenty Puma fashion show, I was in New York, and she was like, "Yo, you got to come to the party. Meet me here." Da 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 da. And I was like, you know, I can't do lines and stuff no more. I'm not haggling by the door. She's like, just come. And I get out, and it's a crazy line. And I'm about to turn around, and I just hear my name shout, and Sherry's at the door. And she's like, Kenny, come. And she pulls me in, and I don't even know where I'm at. And then I go downstairs, and I'm standing at this table, and I'm with C, and I'm at this table, and I'm like, oh my God. And she's like, what? I was like, we met at this table. And then it hit her, and she was like, oh my God, this thing's crazy. But what I will say is, when I was at Howard, and I used to come to New York all the time.
The Garage Club, I figured it out. The Club Up and Down, which formerly Nels.
Yes, exactly.
At Up and Down, which used to be Nels, which is where you met Sierra. I get it, but I just...
Yeah, exactly. So that was it.
But
I'll tell you a really funny story though. When I used to go to Howard, and I used to come up to New York all the time, I don't remember. It was Cheetah, but then there was another club that I went to. And this other club, all I remember was it was across the street from Lot 61. And I went into this club. And I went into this club, and all I remember is
El Flamingo.
And I get in, and I'm at this table, and I'm chilling, having a good time, and I'm green as hell. And I see two big security guards pass me. I see a shorter cat with, like, you know, crazy, amazing outfit, and like a blonde chick walking behind him, and then a space and another security guard. And the space stopped in front of me. Like, the whole train stopped in front of me. And I looked down, and it was Prince. The blonde woman was Zoya, and the gentleman was you.
Oh, okay. I was like waiting for that. Oh yeah. Prince like to go out. Yeah.
Yep. But that was you know, like years ago. But I remember that night distinctly. And then I remember when I met you in New York, I was like, why does he look so familiar? And I was like, oh my God, that was the guy from that night.
I have been told I'm memorable. And who was your crew in New York? Like, who was your first crew?
My first crew in New York was so funny. It was Dow, Mayor, Coltrane, Matty Ho, and there's a couple other cats, but we were all these marketing cats in the urban fashion space who all just ran together, and we just were everywhere together. It was them, and then obviously my family at, you know, at Vibe, again, Bevy, Carla, Ali Muhammad. Yeah.
That's a good first crew. All have gone.
Yeah.
Good first. And then what's the first party in your mind that was like the party?
It was still when oh my God, why am I blanking on the name of it? But Sunday nights, Meatpacking District.
Lotus.
Oh yes, Lotus.
That was my party.
Yeah. Again, all of my memorable nightlife moments in New York usually have some connection to you, Damon. You're definitely legendary. But yeah, that party was insane. Like,
it really was. I went to a whole 2-hour thing on just Lotus. Sunday nights of those.
Mm-hmm.
And was anybody mentoring you in New York those first?
Say that one more time.
Was anybody mentoring you in New York those first?
Bevy.
Oh, good.
Bevy took me, like Mama Bev, all the way. Like Bev. I really don't know where I would be in that moment, in that time, if I didn't have her. I mean, she did everything from school me on going out. Like, yo, like don't be like 50 deep trying to go out. Like, meet your friends there. If they can get in, then they can get in. You go by yourself and you make sure you're good. Or, you know, smacking me upside my head because we're going to a meeting with one of her designer clients, and as we pull up, I'm like, oh, Caesar Piccati. And she like smacks me upside my head. She's like, it's Cesare Pachote. Like, learn how to say these words properly. And then just the wholesomeness of Bev. Like, my first year in New York, I don't know if it was a couldn't afford or just whatever it was, but I didn't go home for Thanksgiving. And she was like, you're not going home for Thanksgiving? And I was like, nah. And she was like, you meet me in Harlem. We gonna to the Smithies for for Thanksgiving.
Bevy is, she was on here, and she's such a rare human, and she's also so generous. You know, for me too. She, you know, she's so generous with connecting me to things, people, and it's in her heart to do that. And I know that it's reciprocal for her, but she genuinely is so generous with that stuff, and she means it. Like she means it 100%. So
100, yeah.
Yeah, she's really, really special. And then who did you look up to, kind of, I guess, either culture or the part at the time? I mean,
Um,
like I would, Lisa Cooper, when I first moved to New York, I saw Lisa Cooper, and I was like, I want whatever, you know, I
yeah.
want. Lisa Cooper to me was, I say, the eternal it girl here. And she had, what I power. You know, she had, it's intangible what she had, amazing, you know. And I was like, I want that.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's funny because Lisa and I are like close now.
Mm-hmm.
But to your point, I remember being that kid coming from DC on a Sunday night, pulling up outside of Cheetah and trying to finagle, you know, two girls in the line to be like, can you please go in with me so I can get in here? Because like you needed, like every guy needed two girls. You said what?
I did the door at Cheetah too.
Yeah. And I just remember that. And I saw this woman come out and just
Yes.
soulfully command everybody and was just such a vibe, and then saw me and just be like, you just come in here and just have a good time. Like you look like you need to have a good time. You come in here. And seeing her, and then, you know, a month or two later, turning on HBO and seeing her on her stoop in like the first episode of Real Sex on HBO was amazing. And then so many just like one-off moments for me with Lisa in New York. Like there was this one Saturday where I went downtown and we met, you know how this was, like we met at Idea in Soho, and then started walking, and then 2 people equals 3 people, and then, you know, Mo's with us, all these cats are with us. We end up being deep as hell, and we pull up underneath Lisa's building, and she's like, what the hell are y'all doing out here? And she's like, come upstairs, I'm gonna cook for y'all. And I'm like, and she cooks? Like, I'm just like, this woman is an anomaly. So definitely I would say Lisa was somebody that I definitely looked up to. I looked up to. There was so many people that were in New York at the time that were just like, I think we all kind of had this authentic kind of like respect for each other, where it was, I'm gonna look out for you, you're gonna look out for me, and this kind of crew mentorship. You know what I'm saying? It was like if you were bold enough to be in this culture, then we all looked out for each other in some given way. You know, it was amazing time.
And then, you know, I see people now, and sometimes we'll be at dinner and stuff, and I'm like, we literally together. We actually grew up together the way that families and brothers and sisters do.
Yeah.
It's so interesting when you get with that certain crew of people, like that dinner you were talking about, the addition, things like that. You know, the reality is we all kind of inspire each other and support each other, interwoven,
Mm-hmm.
that shaped New York City for 2 decades, really. I mean, so,
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah,
so I always said this. Yeah.
Salute to that. Definitely.
Cheers. I do a huge birthday every 1,000 of my closest friends. I'm performing with little kids, something crazy, Sheila E. or something. And I said this for many years. You know, I would do a party in New York. And New York is, you know, the biggest city and the party in the world. So I have a birthday tonight, which is the best party in New York. I'm really, literally doing the best party in the world tonight.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Literally doing the world right now. Think of that. I mean that humbly, as you know. So
No, of course. I mean, but it's true. I've been to these parties. I mean, you came in on a white horse. I mean,
right behind me. So, what was your currently is like? What's your all-time club song? If you're in the club, you're like, "Oh, that's my jam." What's your club song?
Ooh. I think because of the moment it takes me to. I mean, you won't hear it now all the time, but I think when it came out, and you'll appreciate this too, 50 Cent in the Club.
Oh yeah.
Whenever I hear that warm up, I just remember being in Joe's Pub and Beverly Bond playing that thing for her birthday. Like Beverly played it, Questlove played it, everybody just played that song. It was the moment. So that kind of takes me back to a sense of nostalgia that like, if I hear it, I'll like, no matter where I'm at, I'm going to dance. Like it's,
MOS said the same thing. He said that's his song because of came out. He spun it stereo or something. Uh,
mm-hmm.
okay, mine is Too Short every single time. You know, I go nuts on them. If the party's not working, I say that.
Yeah, that's you and your Detroit sister, Elizabeth Barone. Like that's that's y'all. I've seen you two find each other on the dance floor to that song before.
But I said this: everybody from Detroit is like, all white people from Detroit are like us. They're just, I don't know, they're just all like us. So, okay, so when did you kind of like decide and develop the business of all of this? I know you're this going kind of kid or guy going out and being on the scene, but when did it which I didn't know, but when did you kind of develop a real business around it? You mean?
I mean, the business sense of it came in college because me and my two best friends, Bobby and Tony, we had been throwing parties since we were in high school. And then when we graduated and we went to Morgan, Howard, and UVA, we were up and down the Mid-Atlantic, and we were throwing parties at each other's campuses. And we really, at that moment, started realizing that this was like a money opportunity. But then what made it even more interesting was when Alizé was the first brand to hit us up, and they were like, "Hey, we want to pay you to put up our banners in your parties."
Mm-hmm.
And we were like, oh, "Okay." And we started our first, my first company with them. Those are my two business partners, which was called Direct Impulse. And the whole concept came because when Alizé started asking us, well, like, what's the agency that what's your agency? And I was like, well, the people that we cater to make their buying decisions based on their direct impulse. So hence the name started there. And then we started this company that we eventually was a morphing of club culture and marketing at the same time, because it was heavily ingrained in what it took to throw a party and flipping that into the brands. And we were one of the first agencies to label ourselves a lifestyle marketing company, because we were like, we build our strategy based on the lifestyle of our consumers. So yeah, that was the beginning of it, and that was freshman year of college.
And then when did you start Creative Contraband?
So I started Creative Contraband. So after I moved to LA, I knew I wanted to start to.
First of all, why did you move?
I moved to LA because I won. The last winter I spent in New York was notably my last winter I was spending in New York.
What year was that?
99. No, I'm sorry, not 99. 2006. And I remember going outside, and I had on long johns, I had on a hoodie, I had on sweatpants, jeans, and then I had on a snorkel on top of it, and I felt like I was naked when I went outside. Like the wind just got through. And as a result of that, I was just like, yo, like I'm never doing this again. And so I moved out here. And it was also because I knew I wanted to start a family and settle down and everything. So that's when I made that transition.
Right.
But
so you started Creative Contraband after moving.
So yeah, when I came out here, when I was in New York, I like the last year or so that I was in New York, I was working for Puff, and it was right when the cameras were always on with him behind Making of the Band and all these other things that he was doing, and I was like, yo, like I really want to get into this TV thing. Like I've always wanted to create shows, and so when I got out here, I was on this blog called Riot, and it was crazy. It was like me, Virgil, Vashti, like everybody was on this blog, and mine started picking up some traction. And I moved out here to work for LVMH, and I was throwing this party with 10K and Rum, which was the brand that I was managing at the time. And I had like a content team at the party, and we would capture all this content that I would use for my recap, but then I would also use it for this blog as well too. And people started getting into it, and more people were like, yo, like you need to do something with this content, itch that you have. And, my goal was to start this company that would focus on content and culture and do that, and came up with the name Creative Contraband. It's had several different iterations, but that was the start of it, was always to build this content. I got agent, manager, all this stuff, but at the time, which was again 2008, 2009, like every time I walked into a room, people would be like, "Oh, you got the black Jersey Shore?" And I was like, "Absolutely not. Like, that's not what I'm doing." And this cat, Eli Holzman, who had the show called Undercover Boss, was a big like reality TV producer, told me, he was like, "I see exactly what you're trying to do. Go keep on building your shit in the real world and just sit down and wait for the parts to fall off of the leopard that is this industry, and then it'll catch up." And now it's finally caught her.
Isn't that always the case? Waiting up. It's it's the nature of us.
Yep. Early.
I remember, and I was going a lot, and I would go, like, I don't know, often, and I wouldn't go out at all because it was so segregated and so very black and white. And going out, and also my friends would go out, and I would literally refuse to go out. Hip hop party, I'm like, I'm not going.
Mm-hmm.
So in around 2008, or I think 2008, screw it, why don't I do something about it? I started doing, I think you came to my very first party I ever did. I did it in LA. Cash hosted,
Mm-hmm.
Soul Spot. I just did this like, really, really interesting, cool thing that I got. And then I started doing the Chateau Marmont with Rashid. And I did cool parties. I wanted to go. I basically created parties in LA. Wow, that's the truth. So that's why I started doing parties in LA.
Yeah.
So
no, definitely. I mean, that's what you have to do. I mean, even the couple of things that I've done here, luckily, have all been because I was backed by liquor companies, and I could curate what I wanted to curate, and I wasn't like pressed to kind of play the game that people wanted to play. Like when I was doing the first party I did called Lunchbox downtown here, all of my friends who were like party promoters out here, they're like, "Nobody goes downtown. Nobody's going to come to this. Da 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 da." And they were like, "Why are you messing with this kid who's like the geek who has a blog, but then you're messing with these guys that are like, the streetwear guys, but then these guys over here are like the hot, why are you doing that?" And when they got there, they understood. They were like, "Holy shit, there's nothing like this in LA, where there's all these different communities and people were seeing new faces because it didn't exist,
Yeah, no, now so much possibility and activity in LA. I mean, right now, currently, which is 12 years, to get there, but now more creative than, so I believe that. So
Yep.
So what was your Antebellum star? Certain friend of mine. What was I went to the premiere, and he said, I got no idea. What was your involvement, and talk about that?
So I was the executive producer of the film. It's the first film that I've been attached to. I feel blessed for that, of course. But these two amazing directors at the time, Gerard and Chris, who had their company Bush Wrens, who, like me, came from this luxury advertising marketing background, and started getting into more narrative and TV and film. And the three of us met through my really dear friend Talitha, who's a force in her own right in this industry, and making a lot of powerful moves and impact in this industry. And she connected us, and the three of us initially were working on a TV project. And then one day they were like, "Yo, can you read this story that we wrote and tell us what you think about it?" And I read this story, and it like blew my mind. And I was like, okay, this has to be made into a film. And I connected them with another friend of mine who was an independent film producer at the time. He also got his mind blown. I say they were directors because, Talitha, myself, everybody kind of convinced them, like, "Yo, you can actually write the script. Like, you can write, so go write the script." So now they're writer directors, and really seeing the full potential of their creativity, which is amazing. But they had it the whole time. It was just about like turning that light on and saying, "Yo, like, you guys can do this." And they wrote this amazing script. took it out. We had several meetings, and then Lionsgate bought it, and then Janelle was casted, and this thing just took on a life of itself, and it was off to the races. And I think the biggest thing, for me, I tell when people ask me, well, how were you involved? I was like, I was involved in the beginning and the end, because got the ball rolling, and then those guys kind of took it and made it this amazing work that it was. And then I got back involved in the end to work on how is this thing being marketed, how is it being, how are we building community around it, and working with them as well as Lionsgate's marketing department to really deal with the roller coaster that it was, because the film was supposed to come out like the premiere was on my birthday. April was supposed to be on my birthday, April 21st last year, and then obviously Corona, and we became one of the first films that was a theatrical feeling release on PVOD. Like we just were like, yo, like there's a direct to consumer opportunity that we can take. We don't want this movie that talks about our culture, our Black culture, in this time of Corona, where the biggest, the two biggest groups that are affected by this are Black and Brown people. The last thing we want to do is tell people to go to the movie theater to watch it. So let's, allow this to come out, and it had to come out before the election. And so let's allow it to go direct to consumer, and let's build our community on there. And, we number one streaming film for like 3 weeks, the first 3 weeks. So it was amazing.
Well, I obviously loved it no matter what, bias, but, congratulations for you. That's amazing that you had the vision and saw it through, and then it did come out and all those things.
Thank you.
Plot twist that is like mind. That plot twist is mind. Like, to give you clues, a little,
Yeah.
It's mind blowing and amazing.
Yeah. Imagine reading it for the first time. I got on the phone like, this has to be a film. Like when I saw it, I was like,
Yeah, I know, right?
They just did that. Yeah. Yeah. Mind blowing.
I was with V. Bowman. We were at the movie premiere together. We were sitting next to each other, and she in the car together. Right? She knows the director as well, and she had seen it a million times. And she said, I was calling it. I was picking up every clue, right? And I didn't watch this, but I was. So
yeah.
Let me ask you this: New York versus LA.
So what I will tell you is that question is something that needs eras attached to it. So if you're talking about New York versus LA today, LA all the way. If you're talking about New York versus LA, like when I lived in New York, absolutely New York over LA. Like I think that there's been a cultural shift between the coast, and somewhere in the mid 2000s when you couldn't afford to be a creative, like a young creative, and live in New York, LA was a more cost effective and better weather opportunity, and it just all shifted here. And that same kind of energy, like the energy that I used to get on a Saturday morning, being a kid who lived in Harlem and would go downtown, being a kid in Harlem and would go downtown to Soho and like walk on Prince Street, or, just soak in that energy, is when I moved out here and I would see Tyler and all the kids before they blew up, and just see what Fairfax was. And I was just like, this energy, I've seen this before. I know what this energy is right here, and it's starting to shift and come here. And so definitely, I think the eras are important when we're asking that question.
I always say I don't have to choose, therefore I don't. I mean,
exactly.
Place in New York, I go back and forth. But I have many times. If you're 18 or 20, you move to New York.
100%.
But not anymore. Bypass New York, go to LA, because all the creators are here right now. You mean so? Be LA, not so.
Yeah.
But I also don't believe in living. So I do these legendary talks, but I don't like and live in the past.
It's more about respecting it.
Yes.
Yeah.
But honoring it. But
honoring it. Yeah.
LA, but people get stuck in the past, and I definitely, that's not my thing. And I love LA at the moment, but I could go back to New York tomorrow if I needed to. So,
Yep,
so there, I always say I don't have to choose, therefore I don't. So,
exactly.
what are the 5 parties you've ever been to?
5 best parties I've ever been to.
Your own.
One is Mark Barnes Blossoms back in the 90s. Again, everybody being there, taking over a post office and turning it into an amazing nightclub. I would have to say that. 2 is the Lot 61 parties in New York back in the day. 3 is when I was actually a part of the team that did Guastavinos on Friday nights, and that thing was just like mind blowing. And the fact that Sutton Place never shut us down, and I'm like, we're across from the most expensive building in New York on a Friday night, and it's 4 o'clock in the morning, and Buster's outside in a Lamborghini playing his new album, blasting it. 4 would be Puff's birthday party in Cipriani. Man, I'm trying to think of the 5th one. 5th one was when you came in on the horse.
Okay, great. And go to dinner with 4 people. Dead, who would they be?
Say that again. If I had to do a dinner with 4 people,
Living or dead?
Ooh. Muhammad Ali. Prince and Michael. I can't make the choice between either one of them, but Prince and Michael, and Barack Obama.
Listen, I want to go to that dinner. And then who have you met kind of tagged over? You were like, I cannot believe I am like talking to this person or with this person now.
Wow. I would have to say Prince. Because of the way that I met Prince was so iconic. Rashida texted me and Paula late night one night back in the day, like, yo, come to this address real quick. And we were like, okay, and she was like, it's P's house. Come over real quick. I'm like, okay, cool. We're thinking Prince is doing the thing in Vegas. So he's in Vegas and just gave Rashida the house. So she's like just having some friends over in his house. And we pull up, we get there, we go into the house. P was like, oh, I just need to use the restroom to freshen up real quick. We were like, cool. Rashida's like, yeah, it's down that hallway. We're looking at the Grammys and like all the stuff like on the wall, the plaques, everything. And the way it was set up was it was this long hallway and the restroom was here. And across from the restroom was a bench. And there was all these pictures down the hallway. And I'm sitting on the bench looking at the bathroom door and I hear, and I look down the hallway, and here comes Prince high stepping, fixing his pictures on the wall. And I'm just sitting there like, oh my God, what am I going to say to this dude? I'm in this dude's house. Like, I don't know what to do. And then like, he like pulled up on me and he was like, hey man. And I was like, hey, hi, I'm Kenny. He's like, nice to meet you, man. Have a great time tonight, man. It's going to be fun. I was like, okay. And then he like walked off. And then Paula comes out 2 seconds later and I'm like, babe, Prince just walked by. Like, Rashida's not house sitting. Like, the dude is here. And then we went downstairs for the jam session, and he literally picked up on our vibe, brought his microphone stand in front of us, and played love songs for 25 to 30 minutes. Like, this, and I was just like, this is not happening to me right now. This is like insane. Yeah, that was the moment.
Oh, I think I have 1,000 Prince stories. That reminded me, the first time I ever went to his house, it's when Khalees and I didn't tell me, but they surprised me. Going to another, brought me there. Paul, the amount of people there, and I've never seen more Black celebrities in my.
Oh yeah.
Halle Berry was there. Denzel Washington was there. Everybody was there. It was amazing.
Yeah.
That Prince story is amazing. So great one. And then, what inspires you now in life?
My children do. My daughter Eris, who is a senior at Georgetown, and this radical thinking, change maker, creative. Just her energy is just infectious, and you know, she's like, I mean, one of my best friends. Like, I just love like building with her and talking to her. We have these great intellectual conversations, and it's been like this since she was like 7 years old. And then her brother Axel, you know, who's 9, and just like that raw energy, but like now getting connected to culture and understanding what culture is in his own way. It's just, it's really inspiring to see them, and they both just really keep me young, you know. So
Congratulations, by that. You are a great father. Proud of you for that.
thank you so much.
And then finally, work and how can we support you?
Um, what I would say for what I'm doing right now is just, you know, continuing to support the art that pushes the culture, especially Black art. You know, I am out here trying to push these stories and tell these stories and these narratives, and I want to meet more, you know, up and coming creative people. Like, I always tell people the story when you bring up Antebellum, like, you know, Gerard and Chris are amazing forces of creativity, who just needed that push down the hill to kind of get going. And I'm looking for more, you know, up and coming creatives who need that push. So I'm excited about that. You know me, I've always been more of a curator, like, oh, let me get this person, this person, this person, put them together, and then now we have this thing. So there's that. And then, you know, as I start to put out these projects, you know, keep a lookout for them, and watch them.
No, Gerard and Chris have a very bright future. Definitely
Mhm.
did see it for them. Um, you're awesome. I'm really glad that we had this chat. This is my 108th episode. I have celebrated people that have been very important to culture, let them share their stories, like your Prince story and many other stories. Thank you for acknowledge you, and thank you for culture, for a teenager. You have been true to yourself and remained focused the whole time, and kind of celebrating it and bringing it, making it money, and people together that need to be brought together to uh, culture. So thank you for all of that.
Yeah, and I mean, I want to thank you for always upholding the culture, you know, mentoring it, doing this. I mean, you know, you, to me, you and Derek D Nice are two people that I look up to, because in the midst of what was this big, huge shock and kind of like pain, and uncertainty of quarantine and Corona, you guys created something, like two separate things that have given people pleasure and the availability to have a release and connect with people, and find positivity. So I'm definitely thankful for you for this. And you know, I've winked at it before, but I'll tell you again, if there's, and I'm already looking into it, but if there's any way I can make this platform that you've created something larger, I'm definitely going to do what I can do to play a part in that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But getting back to what Eric and I did, I think we just did what we know. That I this is what I know. I'm gonna so
Yep.
and again, take people's minds off what was going on, happy during this time.
Yep.
So I appreciate you saying that. Thank you, Penny. You're awesome. This is a great chat. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Damon.
All right. Have a good
Cool.
night.
Peace.
Bye.